Hello, everybody. Welcome back again to the Riko Snow Game Show, the show where we talk about gaming in all of its forms. Today we have with us Linzors
Hello.
and Wyan.
Hi.
Raph is missing again. He tends to do that sometimes. He might pop up later. He might not. We don't know. We'll see. But yeah, we've got the three of us here. Later on, we're going to talk about a board game called Descent: Journeys in the Dark, the second edition. And we'll also do a little bit of speculation on Nintendo's next big project that they announced. But before we get into that, the last episode, I had talked about my thoughts on Final Fantasy Type 0, but unfortunately, due to an unfortunate technical just bad thing, the episode got erased. It just disappeared. It was very sad. I can't tell you the feels that I was trying to hold back when I saw what had happened. But so as unfortunate as that was, I still want to tell you all about that game, especially since now I've actually got a chance to finish it. I've got to see it all the way through the end, and it's unfortunate that Crimson's not here. I should say Wrath. You all know who Crimson is. Whatever. Anyway.
We do.
Yeah. Yeah, we have too many names for ourselves. Anyway.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, this game is fun. It's a really fun game. It's, its battle system has more in common with something like, say, Kingdom Hearts, than, the traditional Final Fantasy games. But it's got enough of its own little quirks and systems that makes it interesting. One of the big things about Type 0 is how enemies are always like it's never a good idea. It's almost never a good idea to just go up and just straight out attack enemies. Because if they present a weakness, then you get a thing called break sight where this colored icon shows up. And on most enemies, most of the time, if you hit them when that shows up, you can one hit kill them, even if they're several levels stronger than you. I mean, if they're really powerful, you'll still score, probably about 3 times more damage than you would on a normal critical hit and still do tons of damage. And on some bosses, that's the only way to actually fight them at all, is to hit them when they're in that weakened state. But when you're just going out fighting regular monsters and stuff, I mean, you can just, whatever character that you really like, you really get the feel for, that you stick with, you can go out and just slaughter things left and right once you get used to that break sight system. So the combat is really cool and all that. The story, I wasn't digging the story when I first started playing it. But, because, this game, it doesn't focus on any one character, like, at all. And, I have gone and I've read some reviews and stuff and confirmed that, it was what the director was going for. He did want to focus on the class as a whole rather than on a central single protagonist. And that's because, there were, the idea of this kind of thing of how they're portrayed is something that you can see in a lot of like Japanese war movies of the time, where it does focus on a group of people rather than, more of a single person. And it was really amazing because even though you never spent a lot of time really looking at any one individual character that's a part of the main group, you still got to know them well enough through their actions, even through like their gameplay mechanics and things like that, so that when you get to the end of the game and you watch that cutscene, it's kind of hard not to feel it in your feels.
Feel it in the feels.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say too much about how it ends, but it's you can't help but get a little bit emotional when you see the end of the game. And I do have to say, it was the ending, like the last chapter, like blindsided me. I'm not going to say exactly what happened, but throughout all this, you got it's divided up into 8 chapters, and from chapter 1 to chapter 7, you are, it's this war story about how you've got these 3 different city-states at war with each other, and at the end of chapter 7, you manage to pretty much bring all of this whole, all of civilization under your city-state's banner. And then, like, right before you have a chance to celebrate, imagine Evangelion and Attack on Titan had a baby, and that happens to this world.
Oh my gosh.
That is a very disturbed thought.
Yeah, and it kind of is, because like you're not expecting anything. Like, it just comes out of nowhere. Like, you know that it's not the end of the game, right? Especially if you played a lot of Final Fantasies, you know that or if you watch any animes, you know that when they're saying this is going to be the final battle, there's really another bigger battle that comes after that battle. But what I wasn't expecting was, pretty much just this, like I said, it really does feel like some kind of mix between Attack on Titan and Evangelion, where it's just like, what? And unless you have been like really digging into the text stuff in the game and all that you can you can unlock all this historical stuff that you can go in and read. And if you go in and you pour over that stuff, you might be able to get some idea of what's going on at the end. But otherwise, it's just gonna hit you out of nowhere like it did me. And even then, there's still some things I'm not 100% sure on what's going on, because there's certain scenes that you only can unlock and see in your second playthrough. So, yeah. But I mean, it's fun enough, and it's a short of enough of a game that I definitely do want to go back in the near future and get to see that stuff. As long as you're not expecting like a traditional Final Fantasy game out of it, if you're open to the idea of something that's new, but it still feels kind of familiar, it's definitely worth checking out. And it's a much, much more mature game than other games in the series. Nothing explicit or anything like that. It's just, the themes and the tone is much heavier and darker, but they're handled in a very professional way. It doesn't feel heavy-handed or, immaturely mature. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Immaturely mature.
Yeah, mature in air quotes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I understand.
Yeah. Because, and a lot of you don't hardly ever see any kind of blood or anything in Final Fantasy, but, you'll see people, there's a couple of scenes that are almost kind of hard to watch, not because they're really gory or anything, they've got blood on their faces and stuff, and, it's not graphic, but, just the way that, like at the very, very beginning of the game, the first person you see is this guy who's not part of the main cast. He's just this soldier for your country, and he's like, laying on a chocobo. Him and his chocobo are both bleeding out, and at first he's calm and everything, and he's, he kind of seems like he's ready to accept his fate, and then all of a sudden he's just like, oh my god, I'm really dying. I don't want to die. And he just starts breaking down and freaking out and crying, and it's just like, oh, this isn't the Final Fantasy I'm used to.
What have I signed up for?
Yeah. But I mean, it was good. It's not a perfect game. The story's not handled perfectly, but it's very enjoyable, and anybody who's a fan of the Final Fantasy series who is, like I said, open to seeing something that's a little bit different, it's definitely worth checking out.
That sounds cool. It's something I will eventually play when I have more time and money than I do right now, which will be a long time from now. But
all you need is time, my friend, because I'll let you borrow the disc so that you can check it out.
okay.
All you need is time.
I forget such things are capable in this modern day of digital copies.
Yeah. I had bought too many things on digital. I'm having to buy everything I can on disc because I've finally got to the point to where I'm running out of space on my PS4 hard drive.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, it sucks that my PS4 has half the capacity of my PS3.
Yeah, that is kind of weird, but that's what happens when you upgrade stuff.
Mm-hmm. And as I finally, right before, I think it was right before I got my PS4, I upgraded my PS3 hard drive to a terabyte, and now I've got all this space on my PS3 that I'm not using, but I don't want to undo everything on my PS3 again, and especially not on my PS4 to swap out the hard drives. Not at this point.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. Yeah, it's a lot of things to rework. Anyways.
Yeah. But one thing, and Wrath is going to hate to hear this, but after I beat Type 0, I had found out that there was actually a lot of the lore between Type 0 and 13. While it's not the same world, a lot of the stuff that you don't really find out about in Type 0 until the very end has a lot of very similar stuff with Final Fantasy 13. Because see, originally Type 0, 13, and what's now called 15 were originally all part of a collection of Final Fantasies called the Fabula Nova Crystallis Project, something like that, where they all took place in their own timelines and their own worlds, but they shared a lot of similar concepts. So Type 0 was originally called Final Fantasy Agito 13, and 15 originally went under the name Versus 13. So they all were originally under this 13 banner, but when 13 didn't, it kind of got a bad reputation when it was launched. They took the name 13 off of those games. Versus 13 became Versus, and Agito 13 became Type 0. Anyway, to come back to what I'm actually trying to talk about here, when I found out that there was, these interesting bits of the lore that I want to know more about in Type 0, when I found out that they exist almost in the exact same form in the 13 world, I really, really want to go back and check that out. And I found out that there is a program that I can use to basically modify my PS3 game saves for Final Fantasy 13, make myself completely overpowered, and just play through to see the story.
Now that sounds appealing. That sounds like the best way to get through a bad game.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not that it's a bad game. It's just there's something about it about 13 that just kind of fatigued me. I've tried 3 separate occasions to play through it, and all 3 times I would get to about the same place, and then I would go away and not come back to it. But if I have something like that to where I don't have to do any kind of grinding, where I can put my level of power at just the right place to where I'm having fun with the combat, but I'm not really worried about, trying to bash my head through a brick wall, then I'll be able to get through it. I've played certain Final Fantasies in the past that way before, where, where I used like a Game Genie or Game Shark just so that I could just play through it and have fun with it, play, play with it the way I wanted to play with it, and not worry about, spending hours grinding or anything like that.
Yeah.
Which I think should always be an option when it comes to JRPGs, because there are a lot of them that I would have really, really, really enjoyed if they had no kind of, grinding that you had to power level for, in order to actually see through everything.
Yeah, that's one of the worst things about a JRPG is you end up feeling like you're playing an MMO because you are having to spend so much time just trying to get to where you can clear something.
Yeah. It made sense back in the days of the original Nintendo, where that was really your only way to make your game last an epic length, was to have that grind fest, because you just couldn't fit all that stuff onto a one cartridge. But we've outgrown the need for that a long time ago.
Yeah.
I would much rather see a JRPG be balanced so that, like a good example, which is actually an old SquareSoft game, is, did either of you guys ever play Parasite Eve?
No, I think that was one of the ones you tried to get me to play and I never got to.
Oh, okay. That one was really cool. It took place in New York City. You were this this Japanese descended woman who's on a new addition to the police force, and stuff happens with mitochondria to make all these monsters and stuff, almost like, not really Resident Evil style, because they're more like mutants rather than zombies or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the battle system was really cool because you just kind of ran around, and you had a gauge that filled up that you could only attack once that gauge filled up. But while you're waiting on that, you actually run around in your little battle area. So whether or not an enemy hits you was up to you to actually physically avoid it. So it was a really cool little blend between real-time and turn-based combat. But I bring it up because they did exactly what I would love to see more of those JRPGs do, which I think would make more sense, is just playing through the game. You not only was there not a need to power level, but it didn't really even make any kind of sense with just the way that the game was structured. It was very much structured to take you from one plot point to the next, and so you could go through the main story, just beginning to end, doing whatever it is you're supposed to do, and you'll naturally be, if you're playing smart, you're playing like you're supposed to, then you'll be at whatever power level you need to be to get through the game. But it had this extra place in the Chrysler building, which was basically like this huge, 100 level dungeon that once you beat the game once, you could go in there once you reached a certain point in the New Game Plus, and it gave you all these game hours that is almost nothing but combat. And if you make it all the way to those top 100 floors, you get a little bit of extra story out of it, and you have that hidden extra big boss that's bigger than the final boss challenge, but it's its own separate thing. So that any grinding that you do, you're doing it for the sake of, just enjoying playing the game, but it's not keeping you from progressing the storyline. And I think that kind of approach, I'm kind of surprised that we don't see more of that out of the JRPG scene. I think if we had, it might have a stronger presence than it has in the past few years.
I can see that.
Yeah. Honestly, the way you described it, it's not anywhere near Skyrim's level, but that's what it reminded me of. Because Skyrim, you can play just through the story mode and finish it, or you can take a completely different path and never touch story mode. But that's like a, I don't know, more advanced version of it.
Well, I mean,
Maybe.
the thing with Skyrim is Skyrim uses the whole like everything levels with you approach, right?
Yeah,
Like it's very 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 hard to find yourself in a situation where you're not powerful enough that you have to go out and level to come back to it. It's the dragons you find, everything you find, it's going to be tailored to your level. In certain, I know that Final Fantasy VIII did that to an extent. It had a bit more variance to it, but it did something similar. The problem with that system is, I think for a lot of people, that kind of system where everything levels up with you, it makes the leveling system feel cheap, right? Like,
yeah,
you don't feel that sense of gaining more powerful unless you have areas where, oh, this guy's like a pain now, but I can come back later and just like stomp their face in because I've become so much more powerful. Neither system is perfect, but I think that the big thing here is that when you have an RPG that's very much story focused, like most good RPGs are, you really need that. At least in today's day and age, you need to have that kind of balance to where you can just play through the story and not have to pad out hours with just mindless grinding. But like I said, I think it's a good idea to have an optional place for those who like the mindless grind to go and and get something real and tangible out of that without it affecting your ability for anybody else to enjoy the storyline.
yeah. Okay, I agree. I'm just putting that out there.
Oh, I don't know if this interests you guys or not, but I'm pretty sure that Wyon, I'm pretty sure you at least know what game I'll be talking about. But did you guys notice that here recently on the PS3 store they've added, oh gosh, I think it's called Shadow Tower? I want to say is what the name is.
No, I haven't actually been on my PS3 since we bought the PS4. I do not have enough HDMI ports on my TV. Yeah.
Well, I don't hardly turn mine on much here lately. But yeah, that is the name of the game, Shadow Tower. It was a PlayStation 1 game that was one of the precursor games to the Demon's Souls and Dark Souls series.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm pretty sure that you played I think you had played the Japanese demo of it. I think we both had, like ages and ages ago.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's something we used to sit on your couch and try to play, and they would get mad at that.
Yeah, because even the demo that we had, everything was like all in Japanese, so we had no idea what we were doing, what was going on.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. It's I'm thinking it might be the first game that they did like that, because I'm pretty sure Kingsfield was a PlayStation 2 game. So it came even before that game.
Yeah, probably.
But just throwing that out there, I mean, it might be even harder to go back and play after being ruined by, the level of polish and stuff we've seen in games like Demon's Souls and the Dark Souls games. But I just thought that was interesting, for anybody who likes those kind of games at all, that's, something that you can get on the cheap and kind of see an old school kind of implementation of those kind of gameplay. I don't know what the right word is, but that style of that kind of brutal but fair difficulty.
The grueling, the thing you have to pour your life into to truly achieve.
But yeah, why don't we go ahead and just throw out our random bits of speculation about this Nintendo NX thing. Because everybody knows, Nintendo knows that the Wii U is it's one of their weaker consoles that they've had in a long time as far as sales and stuff. So and they haven't said that this is going to be a console, but they just came out with the new 3DS. So
I hate that so much. Why?
I don't know. Maybe it made sense to the guys over in Japan. You would have thought someone would have been like, you guys, in the English language, this might not sound as good as you might think it sounds. Just saying. But yeah, with them doing that kind of little upgrade that they've done with that, yeah, it seems unlikely that it would be a straightforward, new type of handheld system. So it seems like it's either going to be a new console, which wouldn't be, too much of a surprise because, with as little as they're saying, as early as they're saying this, I wouldn't be surprised if this thing is still 3 years out. I would say at least 2, probably closer to 3. Just my personal opinion. So it seems to me it's either going to be a new console or they're going to do something that kind of merges the console with the handheld experience. Because you kind of see them, they've almost kind of set the Wii U up to give you something like that, to where you can play on your pad and use your TV for other things. I wonder if this new system might not be something that goes the same concept but in reverse, to where it's it's a thing that's designed for something that you hold in your hand and you can take with you, and then you can throw it up on your TV through like a USB stick or something simple like that. Whenever you are home and you do have the TV to use. What do you guys think?
I think there's been a lot of speculation that it could be a hybrid where, you could take the gamepad with you. And if they do that, I think it would be a very smart direction for them to go in, because we don't really have that yet. I know you can use the Vita? No.
Yes.
Whatever. Yes. Whatever the PlayStation Portable now is called. I never had a PSP. But I know you can sync that with your PlayStation, but we don't really have a hybrid system yet. And since Nintendo is typically a little bit behind the competition, in some aspects, I think it would be really cool if they came out with this new system.
My 2 cents, I kind of wonder if it's going to be like what they did with the Wii, because the Wii was pretty much just a GameCube with a new controller, maybe a little bit better hardware, but not that great of an upgrade. As far as the hybrid system, I don't see that happening, because if they did that, they would be shooting themselves in the foot, because it would kind of kill the point of having a 3DS. Because any games that you make for 3DS would be able to play on that, I would imagine. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, that is a good point, though. But on the flip side of that coin, it also could, in some ways, be a smart decision, because you look at look at what they've done with some of their more recent games, especially with Super Smash Brothers, where they had a version both on their 3DS and on their Wii U at the same time. And, how many people who even do own both systems do you think are going to buy both games for both systems? And I don't know, there's no concrete evidence I can point to, but it's one of those things that it feels like the right answer.
Yeah, I can see that.
Mhm.
I really can. I don't know. It's really just hard for me to think about it because looking at Nintendo's history, they've made like the biggest innovation Nintendo ever come out with was the N64, which gave us the true pretty 3D graphics.
Mm-hmm.
But from then on out, it's like they've been trying to catch the same magic in a box. I mean, the the motion controls were great for some games. Some games they were real just crappy. I think like the thing that comes to mind is what was the anime Bleach? The Bleach game you and I played.
Mm-hmm.
Was that not the worst motion controls you've ever used on a game?
Well, I mean, that was the thing. Like, the Wii, they did a great job of packaging some simple software that showed, this stuff can work, and people who don't usually play games can wrap their minds around it. But they never did anything with it. They're not, whether it was your first party or the third party that tried to do something with it, nobody could figure out a way to make it work. And I think that's mostly because most games were trying to figure out, or most companies were trying to figure out how to make games that already existed work with that in an interesting way. And that's why they failed. The ones, for something like that, that you go and you do something that different with, you kind of have to think the other way around. You have to think of what you can use with these things, what kind of experience, what kind of mechanics that are interesting that we can do with this thing, and start from there and build a game from that. And I just think that most games were made, they felt like they were made in the other direction, where they try to figure out how to make the controller fit their game.
Yeah, it's like the controller was just a gimmick to the game. Like the game was supposed to be the main point, which I can understand it should be the main point, but they just wanted the controller to be a controller, and yes, it might move a little bit, and you can do this and that, but they really didn't put a lot of effort into it.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at games like God of War. That's how God of War was made. That's why God of War was such a good, solid, excellent experience, because it wasn't built with they didn't start with the idea, okay, we want to make this Greek mythology game and we want to tell this kind of story and let's figure out how to, make the combat have this kind of, evoke this kind of experience that we're going for. They worked as in, we want to make this kind of game. We want to have these kind of mechanics. We're going to use gameplay in this way. And they built the game out from that. Which I think is what a lot of people don't realize about, that's one of the best ways to make a great game, especially any kind of action game, is you start with your mechanics concept, not with your story, not with your world, not with your characters, but with how you actually play the game. That 5 seconds or 7 seconds of fun. You figure that out, you nail that, and then you build your game around it. And every Wii game I played felt like it was built in the opposite direction. I think that's why it came off as feeling so gimmicky, and and it doesn't really seem like they learned their lesson when they went to the Wii U. I've not really touched a Wii U, but they kind of scared their third party support away, like pretty much entirely.
So you're saying you've touched a Wii, but not a Wii U?
I guess.
Do you like touching Wiis, Nathan?
Not as much as I used to.
I mean, Riko. Yeah, Riko.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just happens every time.
Yeah, I know.
Like I said, we have too many names for ourselves.
Yeah.
But I mean, okay. Like, let me ask this question: What do you want to see Nintendo do with their future projects? What do you think? What would they have to do to make you really be interested in Nintendo the way you were back in the N64 days?
I would love to see like, I love the motion control stuff when it's done properly. I would love to see the motion control stuff done the way it was when the Wii was first announced. Like, I remember watching the thing for the Zelda Wii game, Twilight Princess. They were saying, like, when you draw the bow, you would actually have to hold the Wii and the nunchuck, or the Wii motion control or whatever, and the nunchuck, like a bow and arrow, like you're actually drawing it back and then you'd release it. That sort of thing. Something that you actually put effort into, something that would require your reaction time to affect the game. Your emotions, your movement. A more one-to-one experience, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. So you like the concepts of the original Wii. You would love to see them actually refine that technology to make it work the way you imagined it was going to work the first time.
Correct. But the catch is, like, Microsoft tried to achieve that with the Kinect, but the Kinect was so gaudy they could not handle it. I don't know. It's going to require some kind of really fancy new technology to get the effect that I'm hoping for.
Well, do you think that in order to achieve that kind of a thing and to keep it in a price range that's viable for Nintendo, I mean, do you think they would have to do, what they did with the original Wii, and, they would have to make it so that most of their money was into the tech for that stuff and sacrifice the graphical fidelity and that kind of stuff in order to achieve it? Would you still be interested if they still went that route?
No, because they would end up with another Wii. Yeah, because that's essentially what happened with the Wii. I think they dumped all their money into the hardware, trying to get the effects that they promised when they couldn't get it, and they ended up just using the GameCube's graphical prowess, if you could call it that.
Yeah, it being a little baby step up from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then again, graphics. It seems like graphics is getting cheaper and cheaper to get better and better effects. Hardware is improving almost on a daily basis anymore. So as far as that goes, that might not be something you really have to worry about in the future, and they might actually be able to handle it.
Well, what we're seeing now is that you're seeing, the hardware and stuff, it's getting cheaper and more powerful, but the size, like the money you have to dump into the manpower to create the content for that stuff. That's ballooning. So even though while the system itself, in order to make that might be getting cheaper, in order to make use of that stuff, the size of these teams and their budgets are ballooning. Now, one thing that I think would be interesting to see, I can't take credit for this idea. I heard it somewhere else. I think it might have been on Extra Credits, which if you've not heard of that or not watched it, that's super entertaining to watch on just go to YouTube, search for Extra Credits. Super easy to find. Anyway, excuse me. One of the points that they raised is, with these kind of raising costs, would it not be a good idea to start seeing more shared resources, right? Like, you have a big company, like especially somebody like EA, instead of making brand new trees for every single game or brand, things like that, like these little background things, to build up this repository of stock content to use within your company and share that between your games. And, you could very easily do stuff like start using more stuff like that. You can still, apply different kind of effects and things like that so that, you don't have like clashing art styles and things like that, but you're not wasting time and resources to create brand new models and textures every single time you need to make trees or cars or, modern day buildings and things like that.
Yeah, generic content, stuff you're going to see in any and every game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be genius, especially for someone as big as EA. But the catch with that is the way EA is set up. It's all these different little studios under the wing of EA, I guess you could say.
But my point is, especially for somebody like Nintendo, where most of their stuff is first party anyway, you have a lot of the same characters and things like that. That could help them a great deal if they had shared resources across their games.
Yes. I agree 100%. That would be perfect for Nintendo.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the games though, because what comes to mind for me is like The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess had such a different feel to the game, and it had a different art style, that it would be kind of situation based. I think that could work in.
Oh yeah,
definitely,
of course,
definitely. But I mean, some things you could get away with, again, to use trees as an example, you could use, say, the same models, but then, let's say that the texture you have just will not work with your art style. You could still do a new texture, but still use the old model, or even vice versa. Some things it might just be a matter of, lighting, little things like lighting and shading might be the only thing that you need in order to make things line up. And especially when you look at like Mario games, you could definitely have shared models and things between your straight up Mario title, your Mario Karts and your Mario Parties and all that, have all that stuff already there. And which isn't to say you couldn't add stuff to it, have more variants and stuff, but you could still have that vast repository to pull things from. And that could help somebody like Nintendo offset their costs for these kind of things in order to get that. But what about you, Linzor? What would they have to do to make you happy, to make you really want to be a Nintendo girl again?
Well, I honestly don't ever feel like I've not or stepped away from being a Nintendo girl. I still really like Nintendo. I don't know. I feel like with the Wii consoles and everything, they're so focused. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. It seems more like it's focused on party games. So the games that we end up having, they're not really that entertaining unless you have other people willing to play them with you. Mm-hmm. And that's where I get burnt out because, it's like, how long do you want to play Mario Party by yourself? Or how long do you want to play these different games by yourself? With exceptions like being with the Legend of Zelda games where those are obviously one player. But I don't know. It's not that I don't like the party games, because I really do like them. It's just there's no one else that really wants to sit and play them for hours like I do. So,
well, I enjoy playing those. Interest. Yeah, I enjoy playing those kind of games. But like you said, most of the time when you're playing a game, you're going to be playing, either by yourself or, if you are playing multiplayer, it's going to be over the internet or something. So while it's great to have those couch co-op or couch versus experiences, and it's great that they exist, if you don't have the, single player kind of, focused games to be the meat of your library, or if at the very least you don't have a very good variety of those kind of games, it does make it really hard to, keep that system,
from collecting dust.
Yes. Yeah, to keep it in, to actually fit it into your schedule of, of allotting it time for gaming when you've got other better options for when you just want to sit down and play whenever you've got the time for it.
Oh yeah, we've entertained the idea of getting a Wii U. We just haven't done it. And I don't know. I always lean more towards my 3DS because, all the Pokemon franchise games pretty much go to the, handheld console that Nintendo has out at the time. And then, like, the Harvest Moon games, I'm not even sure if there is a Harvest Moon for the Wii U. I don't think there is. But, like, Harvest Moon and Rune Factory are kind of in the same
Well, let me ask you
genre.
this. If Nintendo were to finally make a fully fledged, fully funded, like just everything that should be in their Pokemon game for the Wii U, would the Wii U finally become a must-have system?
For me, probably yes.
Yeah, I could have answered that. I could have answered that.
Because all of the Pokemons belong to me. But yeah, and I don't know. There used to be this trailer floating around that was, I think it was fan made, or maybe it was even no, it was a trailer maybe. But I would love to see like an adventure game that was more geared towards the console. That was Pokemon, where you actually feel like you're out in the wilderness, as a little character, and they're, I don't know, like almost less cartoony and more realistic, where you can really just be immersed in it. I don't know. I just think that it would be cool and something that they could mix it up with. But I don't know.
A Pokemon survival game.
Kind of, I guess.
Like Rust meets Pokemon, where you start out and you're naked.
No, you're going in a weird, dark direction.
And then you pick up a rock and you have to beat it against a tree, which you find out is a Pokemon later on.
Pseudo-Wudo!
Yeah, I would love to see something like I would love to see something that does have a more realistic kind of aesthetic to it, and I would love to see like a new kind of battle system to where where it honestly had a bit more of the feeling like the show had, where you kind of give out generic commands and stuff, and they're like fighting in like real time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they're actually running around fighting each other, and you can shout out commands, and depending on how your relationship is with them, that will affect how quickly or if at all they respond to you and do what you want them to do, and have it be less focused on how many levels it has to determine how effective it is, and how to think of, instead of leveling up to say make it a stronger Pokemon, level it up to make it be a better bond between you and your Pokemon.
Yeah. Did you ever play Gale of Darkness? I believe it was on GameCube.
No, I know of it, but I never had the chance to play it.
It was a Pokemon game, and I don't think that it was very popular, but it totally, the plot and everything, the system of it was totally mixed up from the Pokemon games that we've had for years and years, because, and I can't remember how exactly it went because it's been years and years since I've played it, but it was like there was a darkness that kind of, I guess, got hold of the Pokemon, and even if a trainer had captured a dark Pokemon and it was battling you, you could still capture that person's Pokemon, which is something that, is unheard of in the regular games. You can't capture anyone else's Pokemon, but you could get them, and then the more you battled with them and exposed them to different things, they would slowly turn good. And the end game of it was, you were trying to capture, I think it was Shadow Lugia, and then that one was like so hard to actually turn it back to good. But it was interesting because, they had really tried to think outside of the box and just create something that had a different feel, which I liked, because I've played, since the beginning of Pokemon, and it seems like anymore they're just trying to push the envelope with the Mega Evolutions. And I don't know, I would just love to see something else, something different.
Yeah.
I love the regular original style of the game still. I will still play them. They can keep putting them out and I'll still keep buying them. But I would think it would be cool if they made something a little different.
Yeah, I think the one, because that game sounded interesting, but the one thing that kept me from actually putting any money down on it is, from what I was able to gather, that was the only way to gain Pokemon in that game, was to steal those dark versions from those players. You couldn't find, just regular Pokemon out in the wild and capture them like that, if I've heard correctly.
I honestly cannot remember exactly. That may be true, but I don't know. I remember I enjoyed playing it. That's all I remember. I was just like, wee, something different.
All right. Well, before we run out of time, I do want to talk a bit about a board game that we got to play a little while back, called Descent: Journeys in the Dark. We played the second edition, which came out, I want to say, about a year ago, no more than 2. And it's this really cool little board game. It's got kind of a Dungeons and Dragons-y kind of feel to it, like that kind of fantasy setting. But it is a board game. It's not a tabletop RPG system. But it is designed to kind of give you kind of a feeling of, like, at least the combat from those kind of RPGs, but to give you everything that you need right there in one box. You've got a whole bunch of tiles that fit together literally like puzzle pieces, to make your little maps and everything. You've got several different heroes that each has their own little character card with their abilities and stuff on it. You can get new items and gear and stuff that come in the form of cards that can make your character stronger, or have new abilities or things like that. And then, of course, one player plays as what's called the Overlord, and whenever you're playing a game, that player controls all the monsters and the bad guys that are in that particular quest, and he also gets a deck of special cards that give him special abilities. And you can play the game in one of 2 ways. You can either play it as sort of like a one-off, where you just pick, any particular quest out of your quest book, and, you set up your map and you have a set of rules for, that particular quest. Or you can play a campaign where, you follow a certain set of quests, and depending on whether the heroes or the Overlord win quests in the first act, it will change which quests get played in the second act. So even with multiple campaigns, you still have the possibility for, different experiences and totally different quests throughout multiple campaigns. And you've got cool little miniatures that are, they're not like super, super top quality of, something you'll get from like a Warhammer miniature or something like that. But, they're not bad for what they are. They definitely serve their purpose.
And they don't cost the price of Warhammer figurines.
Certainly not.
Which is the top feature.
Yeah. So yeah, a few weeks ago we got together. We played the first quest in the campaign. So, obviously you guys haven't got to play around with like any of your special abilities that you can collect and, build your characters over time, but you did get to see, the basics of how the game works, how it plays, how, the interaction between the different hero abilities, and how the Overlord can, be a dick to the other players.
It would have been hilarious. You could have done it at the same time.
So, what was your guys' initial impressions of the game?
It was a lot of fun without all the commitment that is required with Dungeons and Dragons. I guess is my best way to put it.
I thought it was fun.
Because it doesn't have. you could maybe force it to, but it doesn't really give you, any kind of, it doesn't give any rules for or really any kind of support for the role play aspect. It is very much just focused on going out and doing these quests and fighting stuff and killing dudes and
all that jazz.
Cool things, yeah.
Yeah. So like what about just the general the mechanics and stuff? Like did you feel like you were did you feel like you were engaged with the game the whole time? Did you feel like you were waiting too long to actually do stuff, or did you really feel like your choices made a difference on the board, like that kind of stuff?
I felt, it felt a lot more active than Dungeons and Dragons typically does to me. Like, I like Dungeons and Dragons, but you can get so tied up in like the story of it, you forget that you're playing a game, and it gets really boring after a while. But as far as the gameplay goes, yeah, every decision and how you're going to act, where you're going to move to, all that sort of stuff does affect the gameplay, and it can affect the other players as well. Sometimes they're not too happy about it. But yeah, it's very well paced, I guess, is the best way to say it.
Hmm. What about you, then, Zorsh?
Yes. Oh, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, by the way, the next time we do this, we need to record this right after we play, rather than waiting nearly a month.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a topic I've wanted to bring up for a while. We just haven't had the chance to.
Self have horrible memories.
Well,
yeah, because someone's always gone.
Yeah.
Crimson.
Yeah.
Wrath. Damn it.
Well, let me put it to you this way: did you have enough fun with it that you would want to do it again and want to continue doing an actual campaign with the game?
Yes.
You're talking to me, Wyon.
Oh.
No, yes, I would. I had a good time with it. Like in most of my life, I had terrible luck with rolls on dice, but other than that, it was a nice game. And it wasn't terribly time consuming, though, you really don't worry about time that much when you're really into playing with your buds. Yeah,
but it is. They do give you the quests at just the right size so that you can, they did a very smart thing by making the introductory quest a single encounter, and then all your quests after that are 2 encounters, and whatever happens in the first encounter affects what happens in the second, but they leave that kind of complexity out of the first time so that that it doesn't make that first session too long. And then by the time you do get to do a second session, you are familiar enough with it that it's not going to take you as long to do the encounter. So you'll end up probably having about the same amount of time of the session will be about the same length, but you'll get to do essentially twice as much in that amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be good. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely love to get together and do that again. I don't, I've really come to love board gaming once, as soon as I found out that there was more out there than just, Monopoly and Battleship, the stuff that you find on Walmart shelves. For a long time, that's all that I knew was out there was that kind of stuff.
Poor deprived fellow.
Yeah. And then one day, I stumbled across the Battlestar Galactica board game, and I was like, oh my god, what is this? It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. I didn't know that board games could be interesting. And I don't have a huge collection. I've only got a few, and I don't get to play them very often. But I always jump on the chance whenever I do have a chance to play that kind of stuff, because I really do think that board games have taken the place, for a large part, of couch co-op. There's not many games outside of your Mario parties and your Mario Karts and stuff like that. There's not a lot of couch co-op options these days.
Yeah.
Oh, let me interject real quick.
Okay.
There's a version of Borderlands that's being released. I think it has Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel, both in one box, and it's going to have 4-player split screen, couch co-op available. But that's it.
I don't know. Borderlands is one of those games that, on paper, I should have absolutely loved it. In practice, I couldn't get into it.
I understand what you mean exactly. I don't think I ever beat any of them.
And I don't understand, like I said, you look at on paper, the facts of it, whatever, it should have been something that I should have just absolutely loved, and I didn't, and I don't really know why. But anyway, back to the board games thing.
Yeah, Wyon.
What? Interrupt? What?
Moo. But yeah, if anybody out there who doesn't know that such a thing as awesome board games exist, a good one-stop website to go to check out and see is fantasyflightgames.com. They've got all kinds of awesome stuff. There's one game that I really, really, really want to play again, because I've only got to play it maybe 3 times, if you can even say that, because it's a huge, epic game called Twilight Imperium. I don't think I've ever got you guys to play that, have I?
No, not that I remember.
I'm pretty sure that you would remember, because this is at minimum, you're looking at 1 hour of game time per player.
Oh my.
So if you've got 4 players, you're looking at least 4 hours, probably somewhere between 4 and 5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I know why we haven't got to play it yet.
We'd need a babysitter, and your wife would need a lot of coloring books.
But it's awesome. You've got, every game is different, because every game you build your own galaxy. You never know which race you're going to play as. Every race has their own strengths and weaknesses. So, some people are, you've got one race that can steal trade goods from another player every turn. You've got one race that's terrible when it comes to any kind of politics or anything, but they've got the strongest warships. The miniatures are great. The little plastic ships are, they're just single colored ships, but they're very nice details. They're the perfect weight. All the materials are just top-notch quality. And as long as you are not an idiot, the rules are pretty easy to understand after after just a round or two. It doesn't take much to understand the core mechanics of the game, and you don't have to. Yeah, but the rules are constructed in a really smart way so that every player doesn't have to know every facet of every rule to understand and play. There's a few basic concepts that, as long as you understand the basics of how you manipulate the board and your pieces on the board, you can very easily play it. And you can get these great, awesome, epic games that you really can't even get from any video game that I know of. You just can't get that kind of experience. And That's what I would love to get to play board games more often, just because they, even if you were to put these games into video game form, they just aren't going to give you the kind of, those kind of experiences that you can get from board games. And in my opinion, when you get everybody together and you're all playing a game that everybody enjoys, you can have, in a lot of cases, more fun with that kind of stuff than you can even with a lot of couch multiplayer video games.
I agree.
Yeah. That was so convincing. Yes, I agree. That's totally my opinion.
Yes.
I like both.
I need to get a shirt made that has Fry's head on it with just that blank stare and just in huge letters, I agree. That'll be the official show t-shirt.
That would be awesome. I agree, says everyone, except for Ras. And then at the bottom it'll say, "This is trash! This is trash!"
Well, I think that pretty much covers everything that we were planning on talking about today. Who knows? Maybe next week we might revisit Type Zero just long enough to ruffle Wrath's feathers and to listen to him yell about why it's trash, even if he's never played it. But yeah, well, I had originally made this announcement in the last episode, but since that episode never aired, you might not have heard. We're moving the show to once every other week instead of weekly. One of the main reasons why I'm doing that is because I've got another podcast going on entitled Reason and Belief. It's about faith, science, moral responsibility, and all that kind of stuff. I take the viewpoint of the Christian perspective, and a friend of mine takes on the viewpoint of the atheist perspective, and we talk about all these different subjects, and so we actually come to consensus on a lot of the things that we talk about. And if you like hearing about these, you like listening to these kind of conversations, and you are looking for a level-headed, calmer kind of conversation where it's not two people talking at each other in loud voices, but two people actually having a conversation, definitely come check that out. It's called Reason and Belief. And that's been a really fun project to take on as well. So from that, we won't have an episode of this show next week. We'll be back in 2 weeks. That'll also give us a little bit more time to, find things to talk about without retreading too much of the same ground. I know we've talked about Final Fantasy in some form or another in every single episode so far.
This is the Final Fantasy game show. I don't know what you're talking about.
But I mean, it's especially like right now, it's a big part of our gaming library. What with, we've all been playing the MMO since it launched. We've got the expansion coming really soon. And it just so happens that, Type Zero came out recently, and that's eat up a lot of my gaming time. So I don't really feel sorry for talking about so much Final Fantasy. If you don't understand why we're talking about so much Final Fantasy, then go out and try some, especially Final Fantasy XIV if you're, keen for trying an MMO that's actually worth playing. So with all that said, we're going to go ahead and take off. Thank you, everybody, for coming by and listening to the show. Leave us comments. Let us know what you think about the show. Let us know if there's certain things that you're wanting to hear us cover that we're not talking about. Let us know. Maybe you want to come on the show and talk about a game that you think has gone too long without getting any kind of mention or anything, and you want to let everybody know why they should know about it, why they should play it. So just let us know. Shoot us an email at ricosnowgameshow@gmail.com, or send me a message on Facebook. You can find me pretty easily, Riko Snow, Riko. Either one of those ways will work. So for now, that's all. Thank you, Lenzors and Wyon, for coming on.
You're welcome.
Having us.
Oh, that too.
It's always great hanging out with you guys. Looking forward to doing more shows in the future. Hopefully next time Wrath can join us and we can listen to him yell at me for whatever reason this week. It's trash! Is it turn-based? Has he got a good story? No? It's trash! I'm not even going to try to do this accent because I will just butcher it. But anyway, yeah, we love you, Wrath. Sorry you couldn't be here this time. Looking forward to you coming back and hanging out with us again. Thank you guys for hanging out with us and listening to the whole show. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye!